Hello, Hartley.
Got it. Heavenly Father, please help us make right choices for our Oakland County and citizens. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Brumman. Here. Brady.
Here.
Gothier.
Here.
Small.
Here.
Thompson.
Here. I'll accept the motion to approve. I'll make a motion to approve minutes from May 18th, 22 regular meetings. Support. Moved by Reggie, supported by Bill. Any comments? All in favor? Motion carries. Starting with, I need to make a couple amendments to the agenda. First of all, I want to add Gary Winnock. Talk about a resolution he wants to bring forward. And then a new business, we need to add approve to sign engagement letter for the 2021 audit.
So Gary will be under presentation.
Yeah. Now public comment. Anybody in house? Okay, nobody in house. Anybody online? The public comment. All right, none. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna slide Gary in right now. Make sure you're not muted. If you're muted, can you hear me, Gary?
I got me, Adam.
All right.
Can you hear me?
You sound pretty rough, but we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Listen, I'm basically asking that we get access back to the Secretary of State's office. This appointment only thing has been a real pain. It's basically, if you go through the resolution, it says the people that, when Jocelyn Benson talked about it, the people that were going to be underserved was the older community because they could only get online. I mean, I've gone in there, my business has taken less than 2 or 3 minutes, and they slate that whole thing for a 10-minute slot. Okay. Our founders had talked about it. Jefferson had talked about it, that our people that are elected officials listen to the government. I know it wasn't popular by everybody when we did that last resolution in August 2 years ago, but it got attention because, we had restaurants that were shut down that didn't make any sense, that were 500 feet from an open county. And there hasn't been a lot of common sense used in this whole thing, and it's making people having to do their stuff. It's just making it rough for them to conduct business. That Secretary of State's office needs to be open. You guys are open. You're doing business. Why aren't they? We're just looking for somebody to elevate this message. And if you pass this resolution, it goes to the other 82 counties. Maybe some of them will chime in and maybe we'll get back to normal. This isn't only happening here. I've talked to Sue's office when I had trouble the last time, and it was a simple thing. I went in and got my wife's license tab, put it on the car, noticed that the tab did not match the license plate by one letter. They don't know how it happened. And I had to go through the whole ritual again to get that fixed. It's ridiculous. Any questions?
Gary? Doesn't look like it, Gary. Well, if that's all you have, we'll.
Thank you.
Oh, maybe you didn't hear me. All right. Well, we'll.
I'm sorry.
We'll talk it over. We'll talk it over and we'll go from there. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Next is John Hartley. Jennifer, sorry.
So the court recording equipment in courtroom B has been on its last legs for some time. I've tried to actually different means to different grant funding to get that, the ones that we've had available to us and have not been successful. We also tried to work with the front of the court. And the problem with trying to get front of the court funding is they can only do a percentage of it based on the domestic cases. And it would be considered an indirect funding for that, meaning that it would be, we would pay for it outright at first. Then next year, they would look at creating and reimbursement for it, and we wouldn't be able to get a reimbursement until 2024, at which it wouldn't be the full 66 or 67%. It would be more of a small percentage based on caseload. So basically, and John checked with ARPA that it's not appropriate funding for ARPA to do this. So I'll let John explain the situation as far as the dire need where we're in right now, but we have enough of an overlay of the two courtrooms that it's going to become an issue, becoming an increasing issue if we don't have court recording equipment in that room. And neither my budget nor his right now has the funding. What we're looking at is roughly $4,400. It's actually about 4,000. It's just under 4,000 for the equipment, and then for the microphones that are required to be with it as well as about $450. So that's the expense that we're.
Currently, the computer, and there's a Windows XP computer, it's about 10-ish years old. And every time they go in there, we pray that it's going to turn on and work. There's been a couple of rain and some of it, it's turned on, it's kind of worked, or we had to finagle it and go in there and make it work. We have a computer in there currently that can handle the extra stuff that we currently use for Zoom in that courtroom. We just need the software and the mixer to make this work.
So about 5,000 for the software and equipment.
About 4,500 for everything.
Okay.
Because one of these said we're gonna go in there and it's not gonna work. And the only that is we back up the recordings. The court is required to have copies of all of the recordings. And it's back into a USB drive because you can't have it in the network for security reasons. So I'm depending on going in there once or so a week, checks if they had any things in there, and then toss them out of the server. Whereas if it was new, it can tie into the network and back up on that.
So come to you reluctantly, like I said, we've been trying to find out the funding for it because it's quite a bit of money sitting in our budgets for this, but we were actually quite hopeful with the CEF second round that we might be able to get with that, but they were very limited in what they offered this year, so we might be able to. And then our drug court funding, although we have enough money to cover it, they won't let us buy equipment or this kind of purchase with it. So we've been trying to get creative, and we're just not being creative enough. So here we are.
Real big at the end of the year, you're gonna have to.
I don't know that the court will print will wait that long.
No, I understand that, but
But-
I meant for maybe reimbursement if we buy it and you do that money left over for the year. Reimburse that.
I'm actually already worried about that in some areas.
Drug court does have local funding. that
Drug
has
court
been
does have
saved.
local funding. That is true. I didn't even think about that. Possibility. It's a possibility. I can talk with Judge Kelly. So when Joe refers to local funding with the drug court, in the event we were not getting grant funding any longer, we would be resorting to that local funding to operate. So I talked to Judge about using that 4,500 as the code.
How much money do they have in local funding?
That's a really good
We have to
question.
go look that up sometime. Dan.
On a few items in the past, we have turned it back and have finance to determine if consider that recovery.
To do that.
And although I certainly, I'm comfortable supporting the concept by all, but I'm happy with that. Will be able to the rest of the board. I would be happy with that.
It's a motion, I'm like, what I was gonna do. Then they go to finance, find out if there's funds.
Then a motion to approve finance funds, is that what you're
Yeah.
saying? So we will table a motion on the table for Carolyn.
Without robbing from another
if there's, we have a motion from Carolyn, if there's enough money in the drug court local funding,
Usable money.
usable money. Then it's approved.
But if
You-
it's not, where do we go from there?
I have to look and see what we can do.
I guess we just have to look and find it.
I'm gonna suggest that you make an application to the ARPA regardless of whether you feel it is appropriate or not.
Thank you.
It's coming back to
Uh,
us.
Jennifer.
Yes.
Don't run away, because I have much for you, but, okay, so motion on the table. Any further discussion? Okay, so this is money, so roll call.
Gothier,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Small,
Yes.
Brady,
Yes,
Brumman.
Yes.
I got an email, a couple days ago about a grant to sign. Do I have to board to approve me to sign that?
It's
Yeah,
just amended, it's amended.
okay, so I can just go ahead and sign it. Okay, that's all, that's really good.
Can you get us a breakdown on the cost or give us something official on these costs? So the finance has it? Yeah, yeah, put it on the desk. That's fine. Thanks.
Thank you.
All set?
Yep.
Thank you.
Oh, court review recording system, that's all one line.
Right, that's all.
Okay, next, Debbie Rochester.
Hello, give me one moment. Oh,
Did help?
host is disabled. Hearing.
Can I see the mouse real quick? Find it.
Thanks. So hello, everybody. Just as a reminder, I'm Debbie Rochester. I was here. 2 months ago, I don't remember when that was, when we did the employee education. And so one of the suggestions I had at that time was looking at doing a fee comparison from the current 457 program that the employees have access to, which is ICMA, or now known as Mission Square, with Morgan Stanley added on as an advisor, compared to the MERS 457 program. So this is a program we've had established for a number of years. A lot of municipalities use this as a standalone 457 program. Some municipalities will offer us as a second offering where employees have a choice of which program they would want to choose. So I had asked Trina to give me information on the information from the investment side of it to be able to do a fee and fund comparison, because really that's kind of where the rubber hits the road on these types of plans, is saying, one, what does the cost look like? Because everybody's costs are going to be a little bit different. And then also, how does the performance of the investments do, tallying in those costs? So I know you've been given a copy of the presentation. I put it into a PowerPoint just so that we could all be looking at the same page at the same time. And I'm not going to go through all of it just because some of it's redundant to the first few slides being information about MERS. I think you guys know enough about us, having a relationship already. So I'll just kind of jump to kind of the highlights of the fee comparison. And, you know, certainly if you have questions as we go along, just jump in. So when you think about a 457 program, they're all going to have a cost attached to it. With the way that the one is set up that you have now being Mission Square with an advisor attached to it, really gives you 2 layers of cost, because of course, Morgan Stanley has their fee and Mission Square has their fees that they always provide. So you kind of have 2 costs that get built into that. Whereas when you're looking at MERS, we're just going to be the one standalone cost of what we build in as far as the expenses go. So when you look at where all those fees come into play with us, it's going to be the plan government. So anybody that works with our 457 program falls under our plan document. So you're not having to rewrite it. We do the auditing, we do all the legal, any of the information related to participants, any of the statements, all of that gets built into the fee that we talk about. So just kind of keep in mind that all of those pieces are added in when we look at it. It's not like the county's ever going to be billed for any additional costs like auditing or any of those types of things, if you did decide to adopt the MERS 457 program. One of the things that we also take on is fiduciary responsibility. So when you think about fiduciary responsibility, all plans have somebody that has to take on the fiduciary responsibility, or really the legal responsibility of offering this plan to your employees. At MERS, because it's our plan document and everybody falls into our plan document, we take on that full fiduciary responsibility. A lot of other plans, depending on kind of how it's set up, it might be that the county is its own fiduciary, where really you're just looking at Mission Square being the record keeper, or it's probably more a co-fiduciary responsibility where Morgan Stanley will say, we take on the responsibility of providing guidance as far as these being appropriate investments for your employees. But ultimately, the county is going to have some sort of fiduciary liability attached to that, just to say, you know, we are overseeing, we're kind of looking at that information that Morgan Stanley gives us and decides whether or not that's an appropriate investment or not. At MERS, we have a standalone investment menu. So whether it's Alcona County, any of the 900 municipalities that we work with in the state of Michigan, everybody falls under the same plan document. We offer everybody the same investment choices. Therefore, we can be the sole fiduciary. So it takes any of that liability away from the county as far as an employee ever saying, you know, I don't think this is an appropriate investment and I want to take you to task with that. They would be taking MERS to task. They wouldn't have any responsibility falling back onto the county. So I think that's always important, just to remember how that fiduciary responsibility works as well. So as I was saying, we do take on that full fiduciary responsibility where we take on the oversight, all of the administration, we do all the investment monitoring. So whether it's our own standalone investments or third-party investments that we do, our investment team is really the group that's responsible for saying, yep, this is appropriate to still be in our menu. And then we also take on all the participant education, which obviously you all witnessed when I was out here a month or two ago. So when we think about the investments, all 457 programs are going to have different investment menus. And so one of the things that we did a number of years ago is we kind of looked at our investments and we said, you know, one of the challenges that participants have, and this would be true even in defined contribution plans, is if you just hand employees a big book and say, here, you figure out what's going to be an investment choice for you, that can be pretty daunting. And it's often the reason that people will choose not to participate in voluntary programs like 457, because they just don't feel that they have the skills, the time, or the knowledge really to take on that responsibility of making those investment choices. And so we did a study a number of years ago and said, is more choice really better? And so when we look at our little jars of jam, that study proved over and over again that the more choice somebody has, the harder it is to make a decision. I can believe this is a true statement because it happens to me in the coffee aisle at Meijer almost every week. I think I should switch my coffee, but what would I switch it to? So 10 years later, I'm still drinking the same coffee. But we see that in our own personal lives, where when we have a lot of choice, it makes it difficult to make a decision. That's the same thing in investments. So that's why we really wanted to consolidate our investment menu instead of just offering a different choice of a variety of investments, saying what types of people do we see saving for retirement and what's an appropriate investment for them. And that's the same investment menu that you see in the defined contribution plan today that would then be a part of the 457 program as well. So when we look at our investment menu, and this is the same menu as I just said in your defined contribution plan today, we look at different choices that are appropriate for somebody that says, I just want somebody to do it for me. I want some help doing it, or I'm just going to do it myself. In the defined contribution plan today, and this would be true if staff had access to the MERS 457 as well, we start everybody off in our do it for me investment options, because the majority of people that are saving for retirement will say, I don't feel comfortable making investment decisions, or even if I do, I don't take a lot of time to monitor this. So that's why we like to use that as the default, where we look at different target date funds to appropriately put somebody into. So when you look at our retirement strategies, they all have different years attached to it. So it goes back to 2015, all the way up to 2065. So when somebody today is enrolled in the defined contribution plan, or if somebody is in the MERS 457 plan, how we figure out which one to put them in is we look at the year that they're born and look for the one that's closest to when they'd be roughly 65 years of age. So in my 457, I'm in a 2030 retirement strategy. So it looks like I just own one investment, but inside of it is a fully diversified portfolio that becomes progressively more conservative over time. So we like to start everybody off there because it's an appropriate investment that is going to give them the right amount of risk for what that timeline is to their retirement. From there, they can make changes as well. So if they want to be more hands-on, they've got those investment options in the Help Me Do It option of individual mutual funds. They can always utilize the self-directed brokerage account as well. So if somebody is really very sophisticated in investments and maybe says, you know, there's really a specific investment that I want to have, I don't have access to it in the MERS menu, they can always utilize the self-directed brokerage account if they choose to. So they still have access if they choose to really the entire investment menu that's available in the world to them at this point as well. So when you think about the costs, all the costs of all of these plans is always going to be laid out a little bit differently. At MERS, what we do is we tie everything in to what's called the total annual operating expense. So if the county adopted the MERS 457 program, there's absolutely no cost to the county to do this. It's all built into this total annual operating expense. So that goes towards the administration, the fact that we send people statements, we give them a website, I come out and do education, as well as the investment. So even for a participant, they're never going to see what we call a hard dollar cost. So they'll never see a fee subtracted from their account. It's all netted out from the investment return. And one of the things that's very unique about MERS is the fact that we operate as a not-for-profit. So that's what tends to make our fee structure be lower. And we've become progressively lower over the last number of years as well. When you start to take a look at I just want to get into your comparison, the comparison itself, what we take a look at is where the participants today have their investments within the Mission Square plan. So we want to be able to offer an apples to apples comparison. So Trina had sent me out the employer statement, so we could look exactly at where the employees have that money is invested today, and then look for the investment that is the apples to apples comparison with MERS. So when we first take a look at it, we just want to look at what the difference of the cost is. So when you take a look at that very top line, it's the asset weighted average expense. So just meaning we looked at where the money was invested today and looked at what those expenses would be for the participant. So those expenses with Morgan Stanley using the Mission Square plan would be 1.14%. Apples to apples comparison to the MERS investments, our fee would be 0.37 of 1%. So a difference of over 0.75% just on what the expenses are within each of the investments that the employees currently have their money in today. So that's always one piece of it that I think is important to look at, is what that fee is. I often compare that to when people look at refinancing their mortgage. You know, we can all see that if we refinance our mortgage and interest rates have gone down, we save thousands of dollars over the life of the mortgage. This is really the same thing. You're just putting more money into your retirement pocket. And then the other side of it is then saying, okay, how do we do relative to the investment returns as well? So looking at where the employees have their money invested today, and then that apples to apples comparison. So the very first line looks at just the last 1 year. So this was looking at a statement that went through to March 31st. So we were looking at if people had had their money invested from March 31st of 2021 to March 31st of 2022. The average return at Morgan Stanley through Mission Square would have been 4.34%. If that same investment was within MERS, it would have been 8.02. So a difference of over 3.68%. The next one is showing the difference of 5 years, and actually over the 5-year period, Morgan Stanley came out a little bit ahead by a little bit less than 0.5%. And even over the 10-year average, we were able to come out a little bit stronger on the performance. So I think it just is telling that, particularly from the fee side and even the longer term performance of the investments, was a stronger performance under the MERS side as well. Any questions on any of that so far? Everyone still has their eyes open, so that's a good sign. Yes?
How often do you review the funds that are within the stocks or funds inside the organization just to keep abreast?
It kind of depends on the investments themselves. So if you think about the target date funds where we start everybody off, it's really a fund of funds. And so with those, they get reviewed every year by the underlying fund manager, but they get rebalanced on a quarterly basis as well, right? So if a specific fund, to really make it very simplistic, it was 70% stocks and 30% bonds, that was their goal. And through the market right now, we see that stocks are going down, bonds kind of going down too, but let's say that gets shifted where the value of the fund is 60% stocks and 40% bonds. On a quarterly basis, they're going to sell off and buy investments to bring it back to that 70-30. So that happens on an annual basis with any of those funds. The other individual mutual funds, depending on kind of what the objective is of the fund, would really dictate how often that fund manager is reviewing it. A lot of them are index funds. And so when you have an index fund, how those funds work and why they're inexpensive is that they're not actively traded. And this would be with MERS or any other company in the world. So if I buy a mutual fund and it's an index, and the index that they're following is the S&P 500, that's the 500 largest companies here in the US. The index funds only rebalance themselves once a year, and it's on January 2nd. So every January 2nd, they look at, okay, what's the weightings of all those funds, all those companies in the S&P 500, and they rebalance to that. And that's going to be true of any index fund. So we have some index funds in that Help Me Do It option. But we have some actively managed funds as well, where the fund manager is deciding on a day-by-day basis, do I buy Ford, do I sell Ford, do I buy XYZ company? So it really kind of depends on the fund, but overseeing all of that is also our investment team. So our investment team that monitors the defined benefit portfolio also oversees, takes on that fiduciary responsibility to say, okay, are these the best fund managers that we should have? And they really have the ability to come in, because they're not all MERS investments. Our target date funds are not managed by us. They're managed by AllianceBernstein. So at any time we could say, well, maybe AllianceBernstein isn't the best choice and we're going to switch over to Fidelity or whoever we choose to. Good question. I have an inability to make a short answer too. Any other questions? So some of the other things when you think about utilizing MERS is we can kind of look at an example of how these fees come into play as well. So I think it's always important to say, how does this work for somebody going through their working career, as well as once they get into retirement as well. So here we have Sarah. Sarah happens to be 30 years old. She makes $45,000 a year, and she's expecting she's going to have a 2% salary increase. So you might want to keep that in mind if you ever hire Sarah. She wants a 2% raise every year. Right now, she's contributing 5% of her pay into the 457 program. She starts off with a $15,000 account balance. We're going to assume a 7% rate of return from the time that she starts off until she reaches age 62. Then she's going into retirement. And so we're going to make her investment more conservative and be able to drop her rate of return down to a 5% rate of return and generate income for her that's going to last until she's 90 years old. So when we kind of flesh that out to see how it works, the difference between MERS as well as the Morgan Stanley fund, if through her working career, so from 35 to 62, when we're using that 7% rate of return and she's contributing 5% of her pay, by the time she reaches age 62, she's going to have just over $363,000 in her Morgan Stanley 457. If she had that exact same investment within the MERS 457, same time frame, looking at the same rate of return, the difference would have been $433,000. So a difference of over $70,000 or about 19%. And really all that we're looking at being different in that example is what that fee had been within her investments. We're using the same rate of return, but now we're saying, well, if she has the exact same investment with a lower cost, she's going to have an extra $70,000 in her pocket when she reaches age 62. Then if she turns that around and says, okay, now I want to generate income and I want to know for sure this money is going to last until I'm age 90, through Morgan Stanley, she'd be able to take out a monthly amount of $1,765. But within MERS, she'd be able to have just under $2,300 a month, or a difference of about $530 a month over a 38-year period as far as being able to have an extra $500 a month in her pocket. So it really shows, kind of what those difference of fees really does over the long term with both during working career and then even once somebody gets into retirement as well. Some of the other things that we provide, and you know this when we look at you being offering defined contribution to your employees today, is that that group of employees receive a quarterly statement. I think one of the nice things for your defined contribution employees is if you did adopt the MERS 457 program, it's going to be a consolidated statement. So anybody that's doing defined contribution as well as the MERS 457, it now becomes one statement for them. So I think that's a little bit easier from participants just to be looking at one statement, being able to see both of those pieces. Same thing with one website, particularly when people get into retirement, they're just dealing with one company. So I think just from simplification, it can be nice for employees as well. We do a lot of different things on the website that just help them from a planning perspective. We talked about around a lot at the last meeting with the employees, just to be able to give them different tools to help make sure they are on track for retirement as well. And then, of course, all the ongoing resources we have. So your employees have access to these resources today. I think it's just a little bit easier when we have that 457 that can get tied in as well. So any other questions, comments, thoughts? So as I said, we kind of see it goes a couple of different ways with different groups when they start to look at the MERS 457. Sometimes it's just that we're being adopted in as additional provider. A board decides, or employees that you may express, like, I don't really want you randomly deciding whether or not I choose Morgan Stanley or MERS. We're happy just to come in on an individual basis, come in as a second provider. There's absolutely no cost to the county for you to do that. And then whatever employees want to participate in it, they've got that ability to do so. If they want to transfer money from Morgan Stanley into the MERS 457, they can do that as well on an individual basis. I typically help people with that because there's going to be forms from Morgan Stanley. We have forms, but it all comes over tax sheltered, no penalties, no cost in them. So even just individually, employees can make that decision. Or you could always decide, you know, if we are going to move into the MERS 457, that's going to be the only provider. And then we can always utilize just a plan transfer. But that's looking at all participants having to transfer their balances over. So, you know, it really becomes a board decision if this is of interest to you to decide kind of which way it would go.
So I guess it's really in a nutshell, the plan that we're in right now is not as beneficial as MERS 457 would be.
Well, it's more expensive for sure, right? We can see that.
Right.
You know, it's got a broader investment menu, but I don't necessarily think that's always a big appeal. I'm not sure how often your advisor is up as far as doing any work with the employees. Do you see much from Morgan Stanley?
They do come maybe once a year.
Yeah, so, you know, if we had the MERS 457, we would just tie it into our ongoing employee education, which now that I finally got out here once, I know how to find all you people and I'll just start showing up if I don't get invited. But, you know, I think it's helpful from the standpoint that we also understand their key retirement plans, right? Whether it's somebody in defined benefit or defined contribution, you know, nobody knows our products better than we do. So even from just being able to explain it and then saying, this is why you want to utilize your 457 as well, right? I was at a road commission yesterday in Mason County, and that was a big part of the conversation. You guys have this phenomenal retirement plan, but that doesn't mean you don't need to have a 457 program. And this is why. And I think we do a really good job of helping educate employees as to why that all ties in together. And especially just knowing the nuances of MERS plans, because they are different when somebody gets into a governmental setting. Another key difference that we have that most of the other 457 providers do not have, and I know Mission Square does not have, is we can offer Roth contributions in our 457 program as well. So if you adopted that you could do pre-tax or Roth, then an employee would have a choice of doing a pre-tax contribution, which helps to reduce their taxable income, which is exactly how they contribute into the defined contribution plan today. All that money is taxable to them as income at retirement. Or they could say, I want to put it in through the Roth 457. That money then goes in on an after-tax basis. When they draw that money out, it all comes out tax-free. So if somebody utilizes the Roth provision within the 457 plan, and let's say they contribute $5,000, and over the years that grows to $25,000, when they take that $25,000 out at retirement, the $20,000 that it grew by they've never had to pay tax. So that can be really valuable to employees, especially younger employees. And younger people really look for Roth provisions now because everything you ever read about in financial planning will say, you know, if you're under 30 or even 40, make sure you're doing some sort of Roth contributions because you just think of all those years of tax sheltered growth. So we can always have that just within the 457 program as well.
Okay, you know, when we had a conversation, I had to zoom in on that one. I think our main concern was is that the conversation that we're having is we're losing employees to other counties that have defined benefits. And we were hoping to land in the spot where we could find something that would be attractive as, which is, I know it's difficult, but so your answer was the 457 program?
No, not necessarily. And I know like a bigger, so that this was one part of it that we started to talk about was just how does this look compared to what you have today? I know Tony Regenovich, who's the regional manager who was with me that day, he's been working with our office on just looking at some comparisons of how can we generate money with different employer contributions into a defined contribution plan. So if you were to increase that defined contribution, employer contribution that you have, kind of how does that compare to those that are saying, but I'm over here in a defined benefit plan with this multiplier. So we're still working on that data. It just takes a little bit longer to pull in. Although it is a good segue to another idea that I had when I was here last time as well, is as we kind of talk through that as well, and this can be a bigger conversation when we come back out with that information, is even utilizing the healthcare savings program. So I brought you some information that you can start studying for the next time I'm back out here. And I'll just kind of touch base on this really quick. So I know, I think maybe you had said that you guys were looking at potentially increasing the employer contribution into the defined contribution plan, right? Maybe bumping it up a couple of percent. So that's one idea. And, you know, obviously that's that much more money into an employee's pocket for retirement. What we see a number of municipalities starting to utilize though is our healthcare savings program. And so this is considered a post-employment benefit. So I always tell employees the thing to remember when we talk about the healthcare savings program is that it has absolutely nothing to do with current health insurance. This is only something available to them when they leave employment. So let's say you were talking about increasing the employer contribution by 2%. You could also think like, I'm just going to leave the defined contribution plan the way it is. And now we're going to put a 2% contribution into the healthcare savings program for these employees as well. The advantage of doing that, this is a tax-free account, right? So when you think about defined contribution plans, as the employee pulls that money out, it all has to be taxed to them as income as they draw it out through their retirement. If you guys were doing, let's just use 2% as a number, 2% of pay going into the healthcare savings program, that's going to go in essentially tax-free to the employees. They're not being taxed on receiving that contribution on a pay period by pay period basis. Same thing, that money gets invested. So it kind of looks like the 457 program a little bit where they have choice of investments. It's the same investment menu. When they have access to this money is when they leave employment. And what they can use it for is to be reimbursed for any qualified medical expenses for themselves, their spouse, and any eligible dependents that they may have. And because it's being utilized for qualified medical expenses, it comes out on a tax-free basis. So it goes in tax-free, grows tax-free, comes out tax-free. You know, what's that?
Would be, you can use it on premium?
Yep, you can use it on premiums. There's a short list in this book of what it's available for. And I can always bring you a larger list as well on page 12. But it can be insurance premiums, even if somebody was leaving, you know, pre-employment. We really designed this in lieu of retiree healthcare, but to the point of there's no age that's attached to this, right? If somebody leaves when they're 50, they can start to utilize the money in their healthcare savings program. So it's not tied to a retirement age, which is another attractive piece of it. So if somebody was leaving and they were going to have COBRA, they could use it to pay their COBRA premiums. If they're using any health insurance, co-pays, deductibles, Medicare Part B premiums when they get to age 65, dental, vision. In the past couple of years, because of COVID and what's not reflected in this book is a lot of over-the-counter things became available as well. So the IRS expands this list, it seems like on an ongoing basis, but you know, it's very extensive. I know I've talked to some people before where there'll be a veteran and they'll be like, oh, I've got insurance and I'm never going to use this money. There's a lot of things that you can use it for, right? Like I keep joking, we have this benefit at MERS where MERS contributes and then we have a required contribution. I keep joking with my husband, when I retire, I'm going to use it for a hearing aid for him. So, you know, there's that. So there's a lot of good things that you can utilize it for. The batteries for the hearing aid. I'm going to be a happy camper someday. But I think this can be a really nice benefit, and to the point that a lot of municipalities use this. So even when you are hiring people, and we know people look for MERS municipalities, right? You can coordinate time, all of that. A lot of people are saying, okay, I understand the value of this healthcare savings program because I may have had it when I was at Otsego County or wherever they may be coming. And especially within this general vicinity, we have a lot of municipalities that have started to use this program too. So. Yeah, and I think that's a big part of it too, is being able to say when, you know, when people are being hired, is having some good information that really gives them a highlight of what their retirement benefits look like, right? So, and that's why I always like to be out doing education too, is, you know, I always think my biggest job is to highlight the municipality to say, like, please understand the value of the benefits that you are receiving from your employer, right? And especially if they come from the private sector, it's so different. I used to work for a 401k plan. I saw what those 401k plans look like. It's nothing like defined contribution plans in government even, right? So a big part of it is just the education piece, I think. So yeah, we will be back out and we'll talk more about that.
Okay.
I thought in the meantime, if we kind of start to look at the 457, kind of plant the seed of how this works, and then just kind of look through some ideas as we move forward.
So just in closing, going from our existing 457 to the MERS 457, the main benefit is it's just the history shows a better investment return on their money.
And a lower
Probably
cost.
the old,
And a lower cost.
and a lower cost.
Yeah.
And they'd be all in one place.
Yeah.
That-
Right. Yeah.
There's no correlation between the amount that were funded in MERS and the 457.
No, this has nothing to do, when you think about the defined benefit and you have those liabilities, you know, this is just a participant directed, yeah. We're not adding liability by having this 457. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, so yeah, if you think of questions, Trina knows how to find me.
Doesn't 457s have different retirement requirements than a lot of the normal?
Yeah, the thing with 457, when people participate pre-tax, right? The nice thing about pre-tax 457 contributions is it's another one of those programs where you just have to leave employment. You don't have to be a specific age, right? So if somebody here is contributing to 457, they're 35 years old, they leave when they're 42. If they want, they can take a distribution out. It's going to be taxed to them as income, but that 10% early withdrawal penalty goes away. Right. So it's just it's another big advantage for people to use this as like a supplemental savings program. All righty.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Nice seeing you all again.
And Debbie, I have a quick question. I missed a couple
Mhm.
minutes there. The employee loans are processed just like they are now for the current defined benefit and defined contribution plans.
Yeah. So you have the choice of whether or not you allow for a loan provision. But yes, if it is, it's the exact same administration as what you see in defined contribution too.
Okay, and then also the employee fees, back when we were initially with Nationwide and we went to Morgan Stanley, it was like a 2% savings for the employees' costs.
Mhm.
And, but they never could see those fees with Nationwide's plan.
Mhm.
So they didn't really realize that those were the fees that they were
Mhm.
being assessed.
Right.
So then when we switched to Morgan Stanley, it was right on the statements where they could view it. And
Mhm.
they really liked being able to see that, even though they never noticed that they were getting a 2% savings.
Yeah, we still show it net of the returns and more towards how Nationwide is, which is how that's what happens on their defined contribution statements now. I know a lot of times when we do come in as a new, I'll share these slides with employees just so that they understand that concept too, and can understand what those differences were, but it's not going to be a specific deduction out of their statement.
Right, because you
Yeah.
were saying that the deduction was actually being taken out of,
The returns.
correct?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I didn't
And
know
that
if they'd be
happens
able to-
with ICMA now, but where they're seeing the physical deduction, is the Morgan Stanley fee on top of it, right? Because that's the thing that you have right now, is you have two sets of fees.
Right.
You have Morgan Stanley and you have the, I keep saying I say Mission Square.
Mhm.
So,
That's all I have.
all right, well, if you think of more, let me know.
Okay.
I'll just jump out of your meeting here.
Okay, moving on. Unfinished business, ARPA fund reporting. Do I recall correctly that you're in,
We were gonna have a meeting last Thursday, then I was out with COVID. So that didn't happen, so there was no meeting.
okay,
So, Bill and I have talked, earlier today, we're gonna have a meeting right away. We have a couple, 3 projects that we have to bring back to the next meeting. But that's where we're at.
you can bring that up there.
Yeah.
Next item, GIS contract.
I'm giving you all the contract for the GIS contract. Tom Michael has reviewed it. And said it's okay. It's the 9 and dime program for Schneider GIS, which will allow our imagery and our shape files and whatever treasure equalization the building department wants to put up there for.
Everything we talked about.
Yep.
Right.
You already approved it. This is just the contract for being signed.
So we need a motion to have our.
Huh?
And find the money for it.
There's no money for it.
Oh, that's
free.
the one
It's the,
that's-
it's the non. Yep.
Gotcha.
Just to clarify everything, I'll make a motion that we authorize our chair to sign the agreement.
Moved and seconded. Prepare to sign the GIS agreement with Schneider Geospatial LLC. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Let's do the claims.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 3 authorized claims and claims presented for payment between 5/18/2022 and 6/14/2022 for check numbers 147,596 to 147,830 and e-check numbers 1864 to 1879 for a grand total of $821,555.79.
Motion is supported. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Small,
Yes.
Brady,
Yes.
Brumman,
Yes.
Gawker,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Patrol car bids.
Okay. Might take me a second because there are 2 2015s. Okay, this is for the 2017 Ford Explorer.
Is that the only bid we received?
No,
Oh, okay.
I haven't looked at them all.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what number 2 is, but those are for the 2015s.
Okay.
Okay, this is from Tony Atkinson. And is that correct? Your bid is $1,000?
That is correct.
Okay, and the minimum bid was 5,000.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Guess I can make that out. Number 2, that must be vehicle number 2 here. All right. Put the correct VIN number on there. And this is James Chase in the amount of $1,100. And then this is also on vehicle number 2. Mike Reed in the amount of $1,302. And all the rest of them are vehicle number 2. So there were no bids on vehicle number 1. This is Tina Schrader in the amount of $1,200. And the last one. Is David Ripple in the amount of $1,222.22. So that is all of them. So you have Mike Grave in the amount of $1,302 for patrol car number 2. That's the highest bid.
I have motion to receive the bids, seconded by Bill. I heard him first. Any further discussion?
Receive it, what we gotta, what do you mean by receive it? Accept them?
Need to receive, accept.
Yeah, you're not receiving, accepting them or you're receiving it. I mean, when you say receiving, okay, we receive,
Now it's been got all
we'll just acknowledge that we have. to.
Yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried.
Can we rebid the other two that didn't,
Yeah, I don't know what the rules are on that. They didn't make the minimum bid for the 2017. So you go for bids again for 2 remaining.
That's up to you. You could lower the bid and reissue it because it did have a minimum bid set. That's up to you.
What was the minimum on car number 1?
$1,000.
So we want to
You
need,
could lower that as well and rerun those 2, or
would you like 500 and 3,000? 700?
yeah,
Well, it's up to the motion. What do you guys want to do?
You got no bids at 1,000.
I make a motion for 500.
but you already have a motion on the table.
Oh,
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
No, we
Okay.
approved it.
Motion to put the bids back out with a minimum bid for vehicle 1 at 500. And mine is 2,500 for the 17 Explorer.
Okay.
And pardon? What was-
2,500 for the Explorer
Okay,
17.
If you would add to that, if they are due. Yeah, there's time. It's nothing to, they're due, they are due by noon of July 5th. I would support that.
That's fine with me.
Moved and supported. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Then we need a motion to accept the bid for vehicle 2.
That one, no.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to accept the bid of 1302 from, not sure the job is here.
Mike Reed.
For vehicle number 2. Second.
Move the second, Carol will be to the punch.
Sorry,
It's all right.
I would.
Move the second, any further discussion? Read roll call on this one.
You want one?
We'll just do, all those in favor.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. What did we have those? The new one?
July 15th.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Or we say that's 3 weeks, so. I wanted to just make sure it wasn't. 6 weeks, but it's 3 weeks.
Next item, Region 9 Planning Area Agency Draft Plan. Tell me about that. Just have it in our package here.
That's it's a long way it goes with directions.
Not the North Face Michigan Aging.
Uh, Yeah, this has already been approved. Endorsed by the Northeast Michigan Regional Council of Aging and Dementia Board of Directors.
Okay,
So I've already voted on this as far as approving it, as far as the director of go. And this is for our review.
and then you need our signature on it as well. Mike,
Yes.
when did we have this information initially?
Just, yeah, I just got it.
Okay, can we afford to get the town?
Yeah, I think so.
So we'll put it on the next agenda and give everybody a chance to look at it.
This is about, it's for 2023 to 2025.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I was like,
I think, what you doing here today? I just don't want anybody to say, well, I didn't get a chance to look at that. Let's do it next. NEMCOG grant application resolution. That is for. We do this every year? No.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And I will, I'll make this resolution to approve the fiscal year 2023 community corrections grant application of NEMCOG. And authorize myself to sign, yeah.
Second.
Move to seconded. Go through roll call.
Brady,
Yes.
Brumman,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Small.
Yep.
Gothier.
Yes.
Motion carried. Next is employment services, rural county. Ooh, is it rural or rural? Rural county resolution.
I had spoke to this a couple weeks ago. But what's going on, if you read this is from Michigan Works, and there's a potential bill coming down from the Senate that they would actually eliminate Michigan Works and go back to the unemployment agency handling applications for employment also. We all remember, I remember back when unemployment agency handled applications for employment, it was a joke. It was a mess. And Michigan is one of the 3 states that have a system like Michigan Works. It's very, very efficient. It's like top of the country, and to lose that for really no reason whatsoever. They're asking that we support the resolution of sending to government saying we don't want to see this change.
I would agree with David on the first decisions. And if that was, there's not, the others, that's a good question. Although it doesn't show it on this.
I think we need to put one together. As far as a resolution for county.
Sensitive.
Well, they were asking for it by July 1st, so I think we still, we're right.
We still need to get it done.
Yeah, we still need to get it done.
That was a motion. I will second.
Make a motion to approve a resolution. To be adopted by Alphona County, is that what you're asking?
I have a motion, I have a second. So we need to formulate something, or do they?
Yeah, well, I can put something on it. I've got,
So that resolution, the motion that you just did allows the chair to sign the resolution once it's
right,
drafted.
yep, and I'll put it there.
Okay, that's the motion. Am I doing that right? Motion for resolution? I don't know.
Motion to approve.
Approve, okay, good. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Next is Caledonia Township Draft Ordinance Plan. Typically what happens on these is that, we read these and it's automatically approved, unless it's represented for Caledonia Township, which is to bring it forward today.
Sure, we don't push on that. Just what it lays, what it lays.
Literally. Next item is budget amendments for Fund 841, 238, and 101.
With a few additions, which is what I put on the top of that.
Okay.
The packet that I provided everybody today morning, some of you had an email. That information is there and it's outlined in this packet that I provided to everyone. I do have some additional, there was a question this morning that piqued my interest in regards to the budget amendments for the general fund, but on the front and the back of that, where it says budget analyst, that
Yeah.
gives the definition of what the overall is amendments are needed for 101, 238, 282, and 841.
Which is put on the line, so
Yeah.
we're picking them off, right?
Yeah.
We're doing one grand.
They have to be in there.
grand
Yeah,
individual.
I'll make a motion.
Oh, we have some
Okay, go ahead.
commentary.
No,
I will move to amend the general fund budget 101 in the amount of 18,191 for a new total of 5,667,550.
second.
Moved and seconded. Any comment? Roll call.
Thompson,
Yes.
Small,
Yes.
Brady,
Yes.
Gothier,
Yes.
Brumman.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next, anybody?
I'll make a motion that we amend the budget, 238. Current budget of $770. Requested amended budget $4,503. Revenue increase of $3,733. Expenditure increase of $3,733.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any further comments? Roll call.
Brumman,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Brady,
Yes.
Small,
Yes.
Gothier.
Yes. In Fund 282, we have a current budget of $0. Requested amended budget of $2,404. Revenue increase of $2,404. Expenditure increase of $2,404.
Support.
Moved and seconded. Dan and Carolyn. Any further comment? Roll call, please.
Brady,
Yes.
Small,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Gothier,
Yes.
Brumman.
Yes.
And in Fund 841, we have a current budget of $0. Requested amended budget of $9,208. Revenue increase of $90,208. Expenditure increase of $90,208. So,
Moved and seconded. Any further comments? Roll call.
Thompson,
Yes.
Brumman,
Yes.
Brady,
Yes.
Small,
yes.
Gothier.
Yes.
All right. I'm gonna sneak something in here. I'm gonna sneak Gary's resolution in here. I'm gonna, have a motion to the resolution of support of our citizens' access to the Secretary of State office in person. Do I have a second?
As written.
As written.
I'll
Well, seconded. Didn't have to. Well, I've had some time to, quite a bit of time to look it over. There's a lot of good history to be read up on in here, but at the end of the day, the population of Oklahoma County, in my opinion, has a better benefit to have, full access to Secretary of State services without having to make appointments or go online to try to get an appointment. It's just our particular population is better served with just have open doors.
I can just tell you, I've got to renew my tabs. One vehicle tabs were sent to me in the mail, one was not. So I went online yesterday, made an appointment here in Harrisville, took me about 3 nanoseconds to do it, and I have an appointment next Tuesday. It wasn't difficult at all. It was a lot more difficult here, though. I think they've refined it a lot, but on the same token, still not being open is kind of crazy in a small community like this.
Well, in the spirit of, hearing resolution, so, any other comments? Okay, then, yeah, resolution, roll call, please.
Brumman, no. Gothier,
No,
Brady,
Yes.
Small,
yes.
Thompson,
No,
Motion does not carry.
Chairman, I would ask if the board is receptive to a modification of this same concept, but a modification
Okay.
of this resolution.
100%.
I would like to bring that forward in our
Next meeting, okay, very good. Thank you, everybody. Next item, memorandum of understanding for the treasurer. Yeah, it's in your packets, it has to do with the position. Hit it all out over here. Yeah, treasurer's assistant position, and I do have, and we've all received affirmative response from the personnel committee. This particular one, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the board approve a memorandum of understanding between Oklahoma County and the Teamsters Local 214 addressing the position of treasurer's assistant. They did, treasurer's office did come to us. We had, I hesitate to use the word extensive conversation, but a thorough conversation regarding it. Now, for that reason, as you got from us, Bill and I thought it was a valid, appropriate request.
Move and seconded, any further discussion?
Financing, the approximate increase for the year would be $2,500, just under $2,500. And that will be funded by the delinquent tax revolving fund, because this has to do with, so the monies would be transferred from there to the general fund to cover the costs. If necessary, if you guys want to just do it without it, that's perfectly fine with me.
Any other conversation? For roll call.
Gothier,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yeah.
Small,
Yes.
Brady,
Yes,
Brumman,
Yes.
motion carries. Next 2 items, memorandum of understanding for equalization and memorandum of understanding from the building department. Was my understanding. Yep, I understand. My understanding that these particular, when did we receive these? Well, I'll let you go ahead and speak on it.
That's good.
Not you, dang it, help me out.
Eric.
Eric.
I'm so sorry.
First, this is just some visiting information from our office. Since you guys never actually get to see some of the stuff we do. Go back to- Thank you. My letter of understanding was given during negotiations. Was turned down, I revised it, it was given out in January. Twice in January. And then we talked about it once in May. Carrie's was actually given out March of last year. And then again, I believe the beginning of May of this year. Yes, ma'am. Happy to answer any questions.
Excuse me, the land division, you guys aren't gonna be doing that anymore, right?
Yes, we are. Caledonia is the only one that is not participating. Yep,
Well, for this.
and we've never done Mankato, so there's two.
Okay, so, but that's just for the rest of the year. Are you gonna continue after that?
No,
As far as I know.
Yeah, I always thought. So,
And the letter of understanding has nothing to do with the land commission. That's just fun facts there.
You have 243 site visits already in 2022? Remember
No,
reading that, right?
there are 243 marked to visit. I've only done 4 townships so far. I think that came to like 97, something like that.
So the numbers on the field work section here, like, so for 2019, 2021, these are actual visits.
Yes,
I see. Then 22 is the slated. Year.
That's what-
Plan to do this year.
yep, that's what we have pulled, ready to go to.
Carolyn,
Chairman, before we address the memorandum of understanding or the steps, I would ask that the board, I will make a motion and I ask the board's support that effective immediately, the director for equalization is directed to no longer allow single visitations to any area that could possibly be detrimental to the well-being of our employees. Further, that we do not do any where there can be, even if there are 2 people, that if they're in an area that we might have some questions, that they absolutely are mandated to have 2 people go. And if there is the least potential question for safety of our employees, that they do not go or visit that area.
so Carolyn has a motion that if a property is found to be a risk to the employee, that they do not visit that particular property
How do we know that?
alone.
Okay,
That's direction to the director.
no, I mean, but you're in your motion.
And even if we choose, they feel there is a potential problem. Guns do not stop at 1. And that is what they've written up. That they do not go to the property. We may need to ask for sheriffs to go with them. We'll cross that bridge at a later time, but commencing now, if they no longer do that, we cannot possibly have the safety of our employees challenged as it is implied to the here.
Is there a second? Support. Oh, there's a second. Okay, Karen. You have a comment.
I'm curious, how do we know which ones not to go to? Are you meaning like the secluded areas in
That's
general?
one of the things that's mentioned in here, yes.
There's been some pretty nice houses that have had the same.
I'm like, safety of our employees in this document is
Which is
challenged.
me, and I'm absolutely
I'm not-
agreeing with you, but are you asking like, we just go out pairs regardless, or?
If there is the least possibility of a threat, of intimidation, of anything else, going to a piece of property.
Once we've already gone there, is that what?
No,
you're saying?
if you know historically,
Yeah.
or if you know from any source, if when you get in your car and say, I'm going to go see Jones, Brown, and Smith Oh, no, that one, that, I've heard that Brown was, do our, if my motion were to go forward, you do not go. I cannot, in any conscience, say that it's okay to risk an employee. Sheriff's Department, they've got risk. EMS has got risk. That's part of their task. It should not be, I don't believe, part of the task of anyone in equalization, in the treasurer. Sometimes I worry about the treasurer going out and posting, but that's, well, that's a word that can deal with that. I do not want to be responsible for hearing that something has happened because you're alone, or if it's, as I just said, bullets don't stop with one person. If a person does have a gun, does plan on using it, and there's two people, they're gonna both get it, not just one. And that is why I'm saying, even with two people, I do not believe that we have the conscience. I would hope we would not have the conscience to say it's okay to go.
I do appreciate that, I do.
Well,
I think we just need to have a discussion of how I'm gonna get my job done, and I can't.
but we have heard this mantra for a couple of years now. Now, we also have been told that anytime it was a challenging, that you always had two people, which this does not imply.
And Troy always says, if I have a bad feeling, if I don't go, he'll go with me.
But that's not what the indication of this document is.
Well, bottom line is anybody could, you don't know, anybody could.
I think you're probably
Yeah,
safe that Mrs. Jones is down the street here.
Mrs. Jones, appreciate it.
Well, then don't go. Then don't go.
Well, I guess my job doesn't make sense.
So.
I-
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. The motion on the table. Any further discussion?
It's common sense. Yeah, and I think it's kind of common sense, person working the job in this case, where if they received a letter from a landowner stating, don't come on my property, they're not gonna go on it because
Of
They
course
know
they're
that.
not, but we're talking about them coming to the gate or walking out the door when they're already on the property. And saying, get the hell off it.
well, once they meet the threat, then obviously they're gonna back off.
But I'm saying, I don't think we should promote them. to
If
go.
there's a perceived threat.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's all that until they're there.
They
Well,
might.
you might, if there's a history, you know,
Yeah,
if
there's
history,
a history,
whatever.
but that's goes back to the common sense thing. Right?
Isn't this? This letter is asking for
This
money.
is what Carolyn's talking about, something completely different.
Right, and that should be treated as something different than what's in front of us here.
Exactly. And I said, not having to do with the request here,
Yeah.
but with what the statement is regarding them being presented with guns, etc.
So,
Let's rather their safety. I don't know.
you guys want all those in favor or roll call on this one? Huh?
I don't think you need to call.
Okay, all those in favor for Carolyn's resolution? All those opposed? Motion carried. Oh, we had, you already did have one opposed.
We're from one of those towns.
So I would,
You have to be brave when you come up to my township.
we don't make
I- I'll
commentary about our
figure-
citizens in public meeting. That's not staff right here.
Sorry.
That's all right. So here's what I would ask. If I'm on a base, you guys want to go ahead with this, somebody can bring a motion forward, but I would like this particular two documents to be reviewed by personnel and have their opinion. I'm not saying, and then we bring it back at the next board meeting. So we have their official opinion from personnel and we can bring it back up next board meeting. That way, it's all in line. Yes, I understand that there was documents shared in the past, but referencing these exact memorandum right here to get the weigh in from personnel. And
Personnel has not seen any requests.
that's why I'm asking if we could have them review it between now and the next meeting, and we can talk about it then. So that's my motion. Second. Move to second.
And if I may, in discussion, Carolyn and Bill, as from finance, I've talked to both individuals and I'm pretty much up to speed on both these requests. So if you have any questions, call me, or I'll be more than happy to give you any information that I have, because I met with both of them. And as far as finance, but I really believe they should follow our guidelines, and that should become personal also.
To be clear, yeah, the motion's not, the issue's not dead, to be clear, we're just wanting to get an official way in for personnel first.
Thank you.
Yep. All those in favor,
Aye.
all those opposed, motion carries. So we want to, I think to tie up this next person any further, but do we want to cram through the rest of this first and then go to closed session, or just go ahead and close session? Closed session now, we do a 5-minute recess.
You want to do all it?
Well, I'll tell you what.
Oh, 21, yeah, got the other.
Oh, I'm sorry, my bad. We have to prove the audit, you're right.
So we're going with Anderson Tech. Don't we have?
Yeah.
I would so move that we.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was. I would so move that we agree to the engagement letter with Anderson Jackson and authorize the chair to sign and the treasurer sign it.
Motion and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Did we take care of,
That's it.
hey Cheryl, did we take care of everything you need to move around for as far as treasure report goes? Just so you don't have to go upstairs and come back or whatever, or
I have a lot to tell you, so
do you? You
I'll be
wanna-
back.
oh, should we? Let's just roll down through there. And then we'll go back in the close. So finance report. What do you have? I think we covered everything in those motions that we would have, right? Give me the extra 10. Okay, so. Personnel report. And if you guys. Hey, treasurer report.
Audit exit interview, the auditors were here last week, went very well. You got the signature on the, I gave you all a review of the audit variances, and I got no replies or anything. Those have been turned into the auditors. You all had a copy of that. I consulted the departments that I was not 100% sure on what the reasons were or wanted confirmation. The rest of those are completed. They're getting together our journal entries for the consolidation of the Cedar Lake funding and the maintenance for the bond repayment. There is a discussion that we need to have in regards to future funding and lake level maintenance, some information that really needs to be discussed. Our ARPA, and I don't know if you want to introduce here or at the meeting. Through the audit, there was some enlightening information that was presented to us in regards to our revenue loss. I had discussed it with everyone before, but I don't know if you want it here or at the archive meeting and have the representative bring it back to you. It was discussed through the audit, just the identification of what the fund, governmental services, what the revenue loss was spent on. Those are specific.
Okay.
There's $265,000 that we had calculated appropriately through the grant. Those dollars need to be accounted for individually. So every dollar of the grant has to be accounted for revenue loss or not. And it has to be specific within the guidelines, which there was a report that was given to the auditors to finalize a single audit in regards to all the governmental services that the revenue loss for 21 was utilized for. And that will be included in the audit report. So moving forward, obviously this year we budgeted $180,000 for the roof project, which is a qualifying project, and anything else that comes through. Which is kind of segues back to why I suggested that they possibly come back for that equipment requesting it under ARPA, because it can be utilized as the lost revenue.
Okay.
For governmental funds. And there was also a project from Dave Hansen that was presented to ARPA, and we did not get a hold of that. We did not get he filed his information, and he said you were gonna arrange a meeting. So-
Yeah,
We haven't had the meeting yet.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was still on the horizon, because that was something that, I mean, I talked to him today and he hadn't heard from anyone, so I just wanted to make sure. I tried to get a meeting together, obviously, life happens and everybody's busy. So I'll just wait for that. Had a communication from the attorneys regarding the class action suit and the documentation they needed for the discovery process for the class action. So we do have a portion of that ready, and we had filled that, we had done that last year when they needed information. Well, now they need A through Z. We have A through C. We have to come up with the routes and present that information from the treasurer's office. So we're working on that. Dog licenses were ordered. We have Red State, Michigan for anyone who has a dog for next year, 2023. We did have our excess proceeds hearing on the new legal process. We did award excess proceeds to an individual on last year's tax sale. We have one property owner that was foreclosed on that has an intent to file for the excess proceeds after the sale, which will happen in the following year. So the new law is running its course, and we're learning all kinds of new stuff. All paid, our credit card process servicing company. We set that up for the equalization department at EMS to take credit card payments for those services separately, because right now we had those two departments using our treasurer services all paid account, and it was a little dicey to get to reconcile at the end of the month. They now have their own individual. We spoke to our representative and asked them to contact those townships that don't currently take credit card payment. And that's Curtis, Guston, Harrisville, Mankato, Millen, Mitchell, and the city of Harrisville, because it's a huge convenience for the people that don't live here year round, and also the treasurers who are not available all the time, which are many because most of them have second jobs. But it is a huge convenience to the taxpayers, and we have noticed a huge increase in payments in the delinquent taxes, and we get constant phone calls of why can't we pay with our credit card? Why can't we pay online? Why can't we? But we encourage them, so we had them contact all the townships. We have had 4 that signed up this year to accept, so we're moving in a good direction. Did the budget analyst hit the ARPA stuff? Speaking of ARPA, I did fill out for the second tranche of payment, which is $1,010,524. $1,010,524.50. That will come no earlier than June 30th, which was the date we got it. We received our last funding from last year. So that is coming. Everything is filled out for the certification, and that was just a lot of stuff that happened in the last couple of weeks. I wanted to get it out.
Thank you.
So does anybody have any questions?
Are you here next Tuesday or no?
Yes.
Do you want to go out the meeting next Tuesday at 4? No,
I think we have to look, but I'll try to make it arrange.
do it like 2 o'clock or something. And then I'll send it out to everybody else, but we talked about it earlier, we need to have one. So either 21st at 2.
All right, clerk's report.
Yes. On June 6th, we have the Bureau of Elections here to do a training for the clerks, local clerks, and like their deputies. And that went really well. It's crunch time for pretty much every county clerk in the state of Michigan right now, as far as ballot orders are concerned. There's also a ballot paper shortage, so they're having a better than we ever have. Cheryl actually caught something, the judge, myself and Cheryl are the election commission. And that's the holdup right now. It's actually not even our county's millage, it's Fairview School, so it's holding up. Mitchell Township's kind of holding us up right now. The state they set the requirements, which is all the in and out that I've been doing. That the local clerks have their ballots in hand to start processing AV ballots by this Saturday. And right now my ballots haven't even printed yet. So, but it's pretty much like that for the whole state. That's just how it works with the deadlines the state sets for write-ins and proposals and cutoff times. So the order's ready to go. I was waiting for Trina to come back down so I can just go hit send on the ballot order button as fast as possible. The big training for election training for all of the inspectors that are going to work at the polls is set for June 30th. Steve DeLongchamp from Election Source, he's going to come and perform the training at the Harrisville Township Hall. We actually have so many, he wanted groups of like 30 people per group that we've had to go into an evening session. So we're going to have a morning, afternoon, and evening session. And the local township clerks, they take the election inspectors applications and they notify me of how many they have. Even though there won't be 120 inspectors that are going to work the elections, it's always nice to have alternates on hand if something happens. Some can't work full day shifts, and so that's a really good election inspector turnout. And that's, like I said, at the Harrisville Township Hall on June 30th. And if anybody wanted to be an inspector, they need to see their local township clerk because they get filed with the local clerks. And then I have a bill also that is from the road commission. I'm going to turn it over to finance. It wasn't, the budget's not appropriate for to pay this bill. Sometimes it's confusing as to where this bill actually gets paid out of between DPW, the drain commission, the landfill. It doesn't matter because I don't think any of them are completely budgeted for. So
Okay.
I'm going to turn that over to you guys. Other than that, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. You have communications in your packets to view at your leisure. Well, I want to sign in. Is there any public comment here today? Tony, go ahead.
Well, I have a couple of issues, things. One is that I may ask if you'll maybe reconsider the bid for the 2017 for a vehicle that if you went out there right now, does not start and is leaking coolant and everything. So, but so forth. The other issue I have is I'm here as a representative of the National Association of County Veteran Service Officers and as a trustee of the Michigan Association of County Veteran Counselors. PACT Act is a burn pit bill named after the Ohio National Guard veteran who died of lung cancer. This House Bill 4568 and Senate Bill 768 will create a merchant to reimburse local governments for property taxes for veterans at the 100% rate. So I encourage you to get a hold of your representatives and your senators and ask them to vote for this PACT Act bill. That's going to help bring that money that county cannot collect from veterans with their tax exemption. Allow those counties to get reimbursed for that, while also allowing veterans to have more benefits for the burn pit and benefits.
Nice.
I'd like to say one last thing here, a quote from the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Veterans made a commitment to the country, and the VA has made a commitment to them that whenever their health problems after they leave the service, that we would take care of those health problems. The VA has fallen short with the Agent Orange veterans. The VA has fallen short with the burn pits. Finally, this bill will allow us to do something right, as I quote the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs.
Thanks, Tony.
Yes, we would like to know, is there any other things you need for our new building and our property other than the contract and the blueprints of the building? If so, if you could get together, put it in writing for us, because for some reason, Mr. Reichel wants them too,
Okay,
and we want to give you the same thing we give him, or vice versa, whatever. So if you can tell us what you want, because we're ready.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
that's. What Scott has, I'm sorry,
Sorry.
Scott,
All right,
sorry.
couple things. The used ambulance that we've had leased for $1 for the last year. We need to move on that and get that finalized. And then there's the estimate from the collision shop from Asabo Collision. $10,390.64 for paint and some minor body repair. Get that finalized. They would like us to move on faster than later. If we can.
We'll do it in July, first meeting in July.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I'd like to take this to the Arbor meeting next Tuesday. Make that
Tuesday, what time?
2 o'clock.
I should be able to do this.
I'll send it out, but I want to bring this back to the Arbor.
Okay.
Can you send him the application as well?
I have a blank one that Cheryl sent me some time ago. I can adapt it to the.
Send them to the West. Once you get that.
And then the other one I have is April and May.
Excuse me, Scott. Sure. This wasn't for our, it's AEDs that we have to be.
Sure,
to the-
yeah,
the Arbor.
I got that back at the office under that.
And I've got it, so we'll have that, that Tuesday for the AEDs.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what.
We can do that. Okay. For the month of April, the write-offs were $16,158.70. And for May, they were $15,307.97. And that should bring us up to date for the count.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Tiffany. Bob and I line the tennis courts for pickleball. So if anybody wants to play, or you know anybody who plays pickleball, it's open, you can bring that. But we play Thursday mornings 9 to 11, and everybody brings a net, and we all play out there. So just so you know, it's available to anybody.
Oh, there's how you.
Anybody online for public comment? I heard a chirp over there. All right, going down. That being said, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess and then go into closed session.
Oh.
Are we?
Yeah.
So we just want to get a lot of these things. Okay, I just wasn't sure what.
What they had, I did put this on the ballot. I find all the other townships I didn't put those, but apparently it looks good. That's full. That's the full to the ballot. Well, she had.
Or is it?
No.
So,
Yeah.
Right now.
Right, otherwise it'd say renewal.
Yeah, oh, I mean, there's too many things that, the way.
So first I had to find that out.
Yeah.
Because their other one is expired until 2024. So they may be letting it 2024 expire and this one would take over.
I mean.
Because what are the years through?
At least get clear.
And to go, you know, that would be- they're gonna list the flat by when you want to tax it, like. Anyway, it said mentor
Okay.
township operating. It said Fairview area schools
Because they still.
mentor township operating knowledge, and then the whole verbiage
I
had to
know.
do with mentor
Oh,
township. They had two absolutely, Ventura didn't have an operating budget, like Millis.
It's in line about that.
So she had to fix it. Well, the official deadline was June 6th.
of Information Act.
I'm very sorry,
What?
but since that's, I didn't unmute it, the video, will you read that one more time?
Okay, I'd like to make a
Because
motion.
that's a sensitive topic.
I'll make a motion to
Would
go
you
in closed session under section 8E of the Open Meetings Act to discuss trial or settlement strategy with legal counsel in connection with the Market Ridge versus Elkhorn County lawsuit, and section 8H to consider a written legal opinion which is exempt from disclosure under section 13(1)G of the Freedom of Information Act.
Support.
Moved and supported. All those, let's do a roll call.
Thompson,
Here.
Brumman,
Yes.
Gawker,
Yes.
Small,
Yeah.
Brady,
Yes.
Gonna do it again.
Yeah, we gotta do it one more time.
Oh, you did on here?
No, I'm not smart, I don't, you know. One more time, make a motion to approve the settlement proposal as presented.
Four.
Moved, supported. Roll call.
Thompson,
Yes.
Gothier,
Yes.
Brumman,
Yes.
Small,
Yes.
Brady.
Yes. Motion carries. There we go. Is anybody hauling out there right now?
I don't see that.
Lauren came down, I think she wanted to talk to us, but
Scott Rice is waiting in your office.
you guys got a 4 o'clock, you guys got a 4 o'clock.
Oh, 4 o'clock.
All right, so any commissioner additional comments? Nope. Okay. Then, we'll close. We'll close. the
Oh, wait,
meeting.
the EMS write-offs. Thank you, Kristen.
Oh, yeah, make a motion to approve the EMS write-offs as presented by Scott for April and May. I'll make that motion. Second by Terry. Roll call.
Brumman,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Brady,
Yes.
Gothier.
Yes.
Small.
Yes.
Go ahead, Lauren, run in. We have one more public comment.
Okay. So, we're just gonna go back to the LOUs that were presented earlier for equalization and building department.
Yep.
From my understanding, it was tabled because it was not presented to. Oh, I'm sorry, I was running.
It wasn't tabled, it was just let personnel look at them because they had not seen it.
Personnel is going, we're not really,
Personnel had seen it.
well, for the purpose of clarity, we're not supposed to talk to you during public comment, but the exact documents that were received today will be reviewed by personnel and to get their findings. And then at the next meeting in July, then we'll have our,
So after we've waited a year on some of these, we have to wait longer. I mean, this was March of 2021, this was sent.
Yes, I mean,
It was sent again, it was brought to the table in negotiations, both of them were. It was denied, I have an email saying it was shot down in negotiations. I personally talked to you. You had told me to email it to you and Dan. After someone else had gotten a raise in January. And ours had been shot down. And I emailed it to you. Both of you asking for the board. It said attached is a letter of understanding that we are asking the board to review and vote on. That was January 20th. It was resent on May 20th. And I feel like certain people get treated a different way. They want a raise and it's like that. I feel like some departments ask for a raise or ask something to be reviewed. And it goes on and on and on and on. I mean, we've talked to all of you, other than you, about this. It has been presented, we've been waiting for over a year on. With nothing. And then other people can walk in and get it approved and on the agenda approved, and I'm just curious on why it's taking so long. And why certain people have to go through so much to get something approved or talked about versus some other people. I mean, this is over a year on this one. We've been asking. I guess that's all I have to say. It's on public record now, so.
Okay.
All right, thank
thanks for
you.
making it down here. That being said, anybody else have any comments? All right, then
I
we will.
would like to send a comment that the negotiations closed, anything and every request. It can up to the point code is null and void.
Well, the long story short is we're gonna resolve this first meeting in July, so. Right,
I'm not gonna get into it with anybody, but I can guarantee you, I've been working on this. This letter of memorandum, I received it yesterday when I talked to Aaron. Never had seen this before. this one right here,
But, well,
and this verbiage, never seen it. So I can't, don't tell me it's been here for a year. It's never, this is the first time I've seen it.
I would have remembered if I had seen it.
Well, it's the first time I've seen it, and
Extremely upset. with the
and-
safety of our-
And I got the memorandum of understanding for the building department yesterday from Erin for the first time. We've had requests from the building department from Carrie. We've talked to her. We've worked with her on a few things, but we never have memorandum of understanding on that
May I
issue.
ask if you got yours from Aaron or if you got yours from your tax?
No, I got it from Erin yesterday. I met with Erin yesterday.
I think this is the conversation best suited for Dan and personnel. And maybe not right in a second.
Well,
I'm just
and
saying.
my comment earlier today was, you don't need personnel, it's gonna go through.
It's not gonna go, that's why we we're trying to channel to the right direction. That's why we want to resolve it. in July.
They need to know. that.
We'll talk.
All right, anything else, guys? All
No, they haven't.
right,
they have a meeting.
so we will adjourn.